Oh hi, I didn't see you there. Hi guys, and welcome to this week's weekly book chat. This week we are reviewing the Dune sequel, Dune Messiah. As usual, we have to start off by saying there are going to be spoilers, and I really have to emphasise that strongly this week. If you are in any way invested in the Dune series, if you are intending to read the book or watch the film's a super big deal, so the chances are you probably will watch the film. Do not watch this video unless you want the plot spoiled, because I cannot emphasise this enough. There are cataclysmic, gargantuan spoilers in this video. So with that being said, let's proceed. I'm going to get straight to the heart of it and say that this book is everything I didn't want it to be. I feel sad saying that because I'm such a fan. I absolutely adored the first book, as I communicated in last week's review. I just thought it was incredible. The film is one of my favourite films. Just the whole concept, the ideology, the universe that Frank Herbert has created, I just couldn't be more invested. So the sequel, and to have that reaction and to actually say that out loud, makes me a bit sad, but that's how I feel. It is everything I didn't want it to be. I feel like at the end of the first book everything went the way it should, but it was still realistic. They still faced so many challenges. Not everybody made it out. Like I said, the main characters were still ruthless, so it went the way I wanted it to. Ultimately, some casualties, but it was critically reputable. It was really good. And I feel like in the second one, he's went for pure critical reputability, but it's like, we're not giving the readers what they want. This is going to be more real life, so to speak, more tragic, more cynical, whatever. But yeah, I've come away from it feeling not good. Yeah, that's my brief synopsis, so if you want to turn off now, I don't blame you. But we're going to dive in anyway, and I'm going to break it down piece by piece. A kind of brief overview of the plot at this point, where's everything sitting. I should start by saying that this book is not action-packed. This isn't an action book the way the first one is. This is much more of a political novel. There's a lot of mostly political machinations, political manoeuvring, and all the action really comes in the last, say, 50, 60 pages of the book. The book is not long. The book's about 300 pages long, significantly shorter than the first book. And like I say, barring one or two incidents, most of the action occurs in the final quarter of the book. So it's much more a political novel. Where we stand is that Paul Atreides is now the Emperor of the Universe. The Fremen are now universe-wide. They are his soldiers, and they're on a jihad. Paul had visions of this in the first book and thought that he could avoid it essentially. If he took enough action, he could stop this happening, but eventually accepts that this can't happen. The Fremen worship him as a messiah, and they are essentially going to cleanse the universe of anyone who won't convert to Paul being their god or their leader, or insert name. So the Fremen enforce Paul's will, do good when Paul wants, but the jihad has went out of control and they have killed billions, which obviously Paul doesn't love. Everything has changed in this novel. They're not out in the desert anymore, they're in the cities in Arrakis, and it alludes to the fact that a lot of the Fremen have went soft. They've kind of got drunk on victory, they live in houses now, they've kind of been ruined by victory to some degree. And a lot of the older Fremen kind of resent the victory as well, because they just want to be back out in the desert living their old way of life. And some of them resent Paul to that end. Paul's sister is now an adult. She's either 15 or 18, but she's an adult in the book. She is essentially the same as Paul, in that she's also omnipotent. She has prescience. She can see the future to some degree. She basically does everything that Paul can do, and that is explained in the book as to why that's happened. Paul's mum is back on Caladan, where the Atreides come from originally. And that's it really. Paul and Shani are still together. Shani has been trying to get pregnant for a long time, but she can't. Paul is married to Irulan, I think that's her name. She's going to be played by Florence Pugh in the sequel. She is the former Emperor's daughter. It's a purely political marriage to give Paul a legitimate claim to the throne, so to speak. So the book opens on Irulan and various members of the guild and other people who are basically creating a conspiracy to overthrow Paul, to kill Shani so that Paul can't create an heir, but they want to preserve Paul because they want Paul's genetics so they can continue breeding the Bene Gesserit, the witches. Paul's mum is a part of their order, They have a breeding program. They're trying to breed their own kind of messiah figure. Even though Paul has went rogue and doesn't obey them, they are trying to harvest his genes so that they can continue breeding. They're desperate for him to get Irulan pregnant because that's the way they want the breeding to go. He won't touch her. She's his wife in name only. She's bitter and she wants to produce the heir, to the universe, who hopefully eventually will either be or lead to the creation of the ultimate leader of the universe, the ultimate messiah for the Bene Gesserit. So she has been secretly spiking Shani with a contraceptive so that she can't get pregnant. That's the outset of the book. Yeah, essentially they want to kill Shani to stop Paul having an heir with her, and ultimately they want to depose Paul, kill him, but keep his genes. Paul, and this really bothered me because I've seen it in other stories, he's all powerful and all knowing to some degree. Not entirely, but pretty much. You can see most of the future. You can see plots against him. You can see, all the different variations and possibilities of what might happen. But somehow with all this knowledge, just feels trapped. Feels like, he sees the future, he's stuck on a path he can't get out of, and ultimately he's just waiting for the hammer to fall and for everything to come crashing down around his ears. Because if he strays from that path in any way, the outcomes will be disastrous. I should say that Paul's Fremen, he says in the book, have killed tens of billions of people, a lot of them innocents, in his name, even though he didn't want that. So that's what's currently happening. Fail to see what the cataclysmic, disastrous outcome Paul straying from this path where he's going to lose everything he loves and lose his power would be. How can it be so much worse than that? They're already killing billions anyway, That was a bit of a plot hole for me. I just don't enjoy the narrative of the good guy, stuck on a path he can't get out of, and even though he has so many tools, resources available and skills and all these good things going for him, somehow he's stuck on a path that he can't get away from, and ultimately he's just accepting that he's doomed. I don't enjoy that plot, and that is really at the heart of this book. One good thing is the turn of Duncan Idaho. So Duncan Idaho is played by Jason Momoa in the first film, and he is killed saving Paul and his mum. So Duncan Idaho comes back in this book. There are these people called the Telu. They have essentially taken his corpse, reanimated it, reprogrammed or whatever, just to be what's called a Gola or something like that. It's basically a kind of, like a reanimated corpse with like a very powerful brain who can advise, protect, etc, etc. The people that created it actually created it with the intention of killing Paul. They gift it to him, and Paul knows he's like, there's something up with this, but I'm going to accept it anyway and see where it goes, because I feel like the man Duncan Idaho, who's a great friend to me, is still in there. And ultimately he is still in there. They programmed him to kill Paul, but that kind of develops. Paul's sister coincidentally falls in love with this character. But I enjoyed the return of Duncan Idaho to some degree. I would like to think that Jason Momoa will return to fill that role, which I would look forward to. I like the character of Paul's sister, Aaliyah, or Aliyah is her name. I think she's a very good character. I think that's one major positive from this book. She has all Paul's powers. She is a very decisive character, very ruthless, but in a good way. She's got Paul's back, and she sees a lot of what's going on, and she does her best to help. I enjoyed her. I think she's a witty character, good substance, and she makes it happen. She doesn't suffer fools. So I really enjoyed her as a character, and I look forward to seeing her in the future books. This is a slow book. Like I said, it is mostly like political manoeuvring. It never lost me. I never felt like, I can't be bored with this, I'm just going to put it down. But I can't really say that it was a page turner. It didn't really have me on the edge of my seat ever. I wasn't bored, but I wasn't enthralled in any way. In all honesty, I don't think it's a patch on the first book. I understand that there are 6 books in this series, and this might be just kind of a gateway book. But I don't think any book should ever be like that. I understand you can be laying the foundations for stories to come. It should still be... Sorry, battery died. As usual. Yeah, I think it should still be engaging. I'm going to give a major spoiler now because I have to. It's about the ending of the book. So again, final warning, I'm going to ruin the ending here. This is, maximum level of spoiler. So if you don't want to see it, skip to the next one. Or if you don't want to hear it anyway, skip to the next one. The ending of the book goes like this. There's an attack and Paul is blinded. The enemies use these kind of atomic weapons, and anyone that is in the vicinity when it happens gets blinded. So Paul is blinded. However, Paul has this prescient vision where he can essentially, because he has the power of foresight, he can still see, but he doesn't have eyes anymore, but he can still see. And he pays for all his men that get blinded to have these mechanical eyes installed, but he refuses to use them because he thinks that the guys that manufacture them are the same guys that manufactured Idaho, the Gola, and he thinks they're bad guys who are trying to bring him down, which is true, and he won't put their eyes in him in case they have some sort of control over him. That's a side issue. He goes blind. It's the Fremen tradition that any man who goes blind is left out in the desert. He just has to wander into the desert and let the desert take him. Paul's argument is, I don't have eyes anymore, but I'm not blind, so that doesn't apply to me because I can still see. And then, so that was like, okay, major disaster, but whatever, we move on. And then it comes to the end where, first of all, Paul was right, Duncan Idaho is kind of a plant, and he does, there is a trigger word, and he then tries to kill Paul. However, the original Duncan Idaho that is within the body is able to overcome that, and it just eventually is Duncan Idaho again, and it doesn't kill Paul. Chani dies in childbirth. She gives birth to twins. Paul didn't see that in his visions, he only seen a little girl, but there's a boy and a girl, and they have all Paul's powers. They have all his Kwisatz Haderach powers, and they're going to be, everything that he is. He kind of has to allow the plot against him to unravel to avoid these disasters that are going to happen if he doesn't, even though, like I said, he's already accidentally killed billions of people anyway, so I don't really see how it could get much worse. So he allows that to unfold, and in doing so, he loses his kind of mental foresight, his ability to see the future, and his ability to see with psychic means without eyes. So he's now blind, as in blind to the future, and physically blind now as well. So in order that the Fremen will follow his children and allow them to be legitimate heirs to Paul, Paul follows the Fremen tradition of, now that he is completely blind, he wanders out into the desert and lets the desert take him, and he leaves his twins with his sister so that she can care for them until they're old enough to rule. And the sister is now with Duncan Idaho, who has overcame his negative programming and has been brought back to life and is now a good guy again. And that's it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry. So just like, so see the good guy that you invested all this time in, and he came through all these trials and he made it to be the Emperor of the Universe. Well, what happens is that the good guys, the oppressed indigenous people that he was fighting alongside to free, well, they turn into a jihad group who then go and commit genocide throughout the universe. Even the ones that are okay resent him because they've lost their old way of life. People around him plot against them, but for some reason even though he can see it happening, can't undo it because it will bring on disaster. And then also his wife dies in childbirth, he is blinded, and then walks out to the desert to essentially commit suicide. Is that good? Are you okay with that? I'm so annoyed. Like, I'm so annoyed. I don't want to read the other 4 books now because that's what you're willing to do to your main character. I get it, be ruthless, kill supporting characters, fine. I understand that it adds critical reputability, and I know that is what the writer was going for with this. It's like, I care about being reputable so much that I don't care about a happy ending. I'm just going to be ruthless and make everyone miserable because then, that's not traditional, and I'll come off as higher end by doing that. That's what I'm taking from that. And I think it's a lot of rubbish. So it's really putting me off for reading the next 4 books. I'm unsure if I'm going to proceed. I've got the next one in the series there. It's called Children of Dune. I probably will read that just to see how it goes, the tone of that. But see if it builds up those characters and then they end up getting slaughtered or something again, I'm done. I'm not reading the 6, and I'm not reading the other ones in the universe either because there are additional books. So to sum up, I'm deeply annoyed. Was it still a well-written book? Yeah, the guy's a good writer, but like, it was slow and it was somewhat depressing, and the ending annoyed me more than I can express. So I'm sorry, but 5 out of 10. Slow, sad, frustrating. Do you know those plots in books and in films where the main characters could not easily, but there is a very clear path for them to fix their problem? And there's, oh no, I can't do it. Like, do you know that way when someone, for example, what's happening in Game of Thrones, where like some bad guy is pulling the strings and playing people off each other, and if they just had a logical conversation, which is what anyone would have in real life, they'd immediately go, oh, I thought you were the bad guy. Oh no, it's that guy pulling the strings. Did he, was he pouring poison in your ear? Oh, he poured poison in my ear as well. Oh right, so it's actually him. Okay, easy, well we know who the bad guy is then. That's what someone would do in real life. Yet somehow in books and films, people just don't have the obvious conversation. Nobody addresses the elephant in the room, and they just let events unfold until it crashes down around their ears. And I just think it's just not realistic. And like that, so you kind of have the power to just, because you're literally emperor of the universe and kind of anyone killed that you want, you had the power to wipe out all your enemies, but for some reason you have these visions where that would lead to disaster, even though we're never quite sure of what that disaster is. So ultimately you just have to allow your own doom to come. I'm not happy. So anyway, 5 out of 10. It would never put me off reading the first Dune book because it is incredible. So even as a standalone novel, the first one is amazing, and I would still encourage you to read that because, like I say, even on its own, it's incredible, and you get so much enjoyment and satisfaction out of it. However, to undertake the series, I am now unsure. I'm going to do the third one just because I'm so committed to the franchise because of how much I love the first one. It's touch and go whether I enjoy that or not, whether or not I will then continue. But the second one, I'm afraid to say, is a major swing and a miss. For it does everything that you don't want it to do. It's everything I hoped it wouldn't be. And yeah, the ending has actually made me really annoyed. So anyway, that is the end of another weekly book chat. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you read the book. I will link the book in the notes, if you want to get it, even after that very scathing review. And like I said, reach out, let me know what you think, if there's any book that I should be reviewing in the upcoming reviews. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Peace out.